Welcome in, everybody, to kick off the tip-off with Noah and Gage, coming at you Saturday before the Super Bowl. Gage, got anything to say to the people that we're bringing this video to?
Yeah, man. Third time's hopefully the charm. Had a hell of a day getting all this set up. So finally glad. Hopefully things run smooth this time and everything works out. So
Yeah, if anybody that
excited to finally start this, man. It's been a while, been a lot in the making. So finally putting the pieces together for sure.
yeah, just a side note, if anybody has any technical help or advice for us, please let us know. Would really appreciate that.
That's coming from an IT guy too. So
Yep, yes, sir.
for sure.
All right, Gage. So kicking it off here, going to get into the Super Bowl matchup between the Chiefs and the Eagles. Super Bowl LIX, and additionally, towards the end of the program here, we're going to go the NFL Honor Awards. Go ahead and try and get into a little bit of that. What we agreed with, what we didn't agree with. Starting us off here, Gage. What do you see with this Super Bowl here? Do you see an edge somewhere, or what do you see?
Yeah, man. Well, as you can see, I'm actually in the locker room. Andy Reid's back there eating a cheeseburger somewhere. So, yeah, man, let's start off Super Bowl LIX. Let's start off with how these guys got here, right? So, Chiefs coming off a 15-2 record, which one of the losses being the last game where they rested their starters to the Broncos, losing 38-0. So, really 15-1, where you want to look at it. But they come in to the AFC playoffs with the first round bye, going to the second round where they run into the Houston Texans, which, as you and I were kind of watching that, thought more so the story of that game was kind of Will Anderson, C.J. Stroud, and D'Amico Ryans kind of giving the Chiefs some fits. They win that game 23-14, kind of a slow game. Mahomes throws 177 yards, one touchdown. Kareem Hunt running one in, and Kelsey catches that crazy falling down touchdown. And Chiefs move on to win that game where they played the Bills for, what would that be now, second or third consecutive time?
Second year, I believe. No, it would be
No,
this third year. It would be the second year,
it was
third year.
The Bengals. Yeah, the Bengals beat them in the AFC Championship 2022, maybe 23,
Yep.
somewhere in there. But besides the fact they run into Buffalo, great game as always. Him versus Allen is just kind of that modern day quarterback battle where we'll look back and really appreciate those games just because of how good those guys are. Allen taking home the MVP, so no slouch for sure. But they come in there, they win that game as well, 32-29. First time the Chiefs scored over 30 points. They scored 30 points in the regular season against the Buccaneers in an overtime game, but this was the first time they exceeded 30 points. You have any thoughts about that Buffalo game? I know that was a couple weeks ago, but kind of a back and forth game, and couple plays, couple spots from the ref that favors the Bills, and maybe we're talking about the Bills versus Eagles here.
And I agree. They're definitely. I wouldn't even say controversial calls, but when you look into the game, Bills and Chiefs, there were times where Cook looked like, old Emmitt Smith out there running. Like, let's be honest
absolutely.
here. And I feel like they abandoned that, and we're getting to a situation where they were running QB sneak after QB sneak to pick up these short yard situations. Eventually, their luck was going to run out on that. I think the time before they got what some might call a controversial spot on the 4th and 1 there for the Chiefs to get the ball back. What we saw was the time before that, he fumbles when he jumps over the pile. This next time he gets it, they go back and review it. And I'm sorry, if you go to a review on 4th and 1, 85% of the time you're not getting that spot that you need to get the first down.
Many times it's gonna favor the defense, and especially you factor in the fact that it's a home playoff game for the Chiefs, and you get your answer for sure.
Additionally to that,
go ahead.
Yeah. So additionally to that, just thinking of it, when they get the ball back, the Bills do get the ball back, and they run that, I guess little play actiony, but he rolls out to his right. They bring a blitz off the right side. I think the biggest thing to realize there was Spags was waiting for that. He was waiting for that all
held
game.
Held his card, ace up his sleeve, literally the entire game, and pulled it there at the final play for the Bills. Yeah.
Yep.
That's definitely a testament. We'll get into Spags here, as he's going to play a key part in this matchup.
So just
the Eagles.
Looking into the Eagles, how they got here is that's where I think we should go next. So they didn't have that first round bye like the Chiefs did. So they started off by playing Green Bay in the wild card game. Jordan Love, a lot of question marks behind him after this season.
Yeah, definitely a rough end to his season for sure.
See, Hurts only passes for 131 yards that game. So really looking at it, I don't know if the Eagles won that game or the Packers beat themselves, but either way, they come out on top there. They go into the next game where they play the Rams, where I think if conditions are a little bit different, I don't know if the Eagles surpass that game, but we're not going to go anything. Beating Stafford in the playoffs is a very serious.
Rams always a tough matchup in the playoffs. Anytime you're running into McVay and Stafford, I mean, those guys are proven winners. They've won the Super Bowl recently. Always a scary sight, man. And they kind of got healthy at the right time. Cooper Kupp coming back, Puka dealing with that hamstring all year long. Really finally got healthy. And really that the last drive, Puka catches that deep ball, puts him into he's across the 50-yard line. And then I believe it was Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis coming up the middle for that huge sack late in the game, kind of killed that game-winning drive. Not game-winning drive, but to tie it for the Rams. So, yeah, man, that was a sneaky game for sure. Rams were closer than a lot of people think.
Definitely think the weather had a lot to do with that game. But, you can't short the Eagles because these are situations where you have to win, and it doesn't matter how you win as long as you advance. You're surviving and advancing, and they did those 2 times in a week before finally this game we get to with Washington for the NFC Championship. They play the Commanders, and you look at the game and you're thinking, man, is Daniels going to do this? Is this guy going to be the guy? And they set it straight pretty early that the Eagles were the team to beat out of the NFC, and they really get at them 55-23.
Yeah, that first drive in that game, the Commanders go down the field, kind of that long, methodical drive where they end up scoring a touchdown, and, you kind of open your eyes and you're like, hold on a second, do we have a game on our hands here? And how do the Eagles respond? It was, one play, 60, 70-yard touchdown from Saquon Barkley just takes the air out of the team for sure.
That's the thing with Saquon. I mean, you see... And we've seen in the NFL Honor Awards what they were looking at with him for Offensive Player of the Year. So shout out for him for getting that. But I mean, he continuously.
You have a take down the line that I actually really like. So we'll get into that later. But
yep. So just looking into the matchup itself, Gage, what do you see in here? Do you see an edge towards Chiefs or edge towards Eagles, or do you want to get into that?
Yeah, definitely get into that. Just last subject about how the Eagles getting here in that game versus Washington. Saquon, doing the most versus the Rams and the Commanders. In that game versus the Commanders, 15 carries, 118 yards, 3 touchdowns, averaging 8 yards a carry. And that kind of brings me into this Super Bowl matchup, right? I think a lot of this is going to factor into, can the Chiefs stop the run? I think Spags will really make that a vocal point to, say if Jalen Hurts is going to throw the ball and beat us, I think we're okay with that. But we're not going to let Saquon we're going to attempt to try and stop him. I'm not sure anybody can stop him the way he's been going recently.
Yeah, biggest thing to look at with that is you got to be ready to tackle. If you're going to play Saquon, you've got to be ready to tackle. You see it all. You've seen it all year long. 4 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, 2 yards, 3 yards, and then next play there goes a 60-yard bomb down the sidelines with him just running it. I mean, it is crazy the impact he's had for that team this season and just his big playability. Outside of being a guy that can pass block and tote the yard for that 2 or 3 yard first down you need, and even give the brotherly shove to get Hurts in the end zone there. Those are both guys back there squatting over 500 pounds, so that's always going to be hard to stop. But for his big playability, and it seems to come in times where they need some energy, and it just happens. Yep.
Yeah, like you mentioned, he kind of has that acceleration where he hits the hole, makes that one cut, and nobody's touched him, and that's pretty special. I mean, you and I have kind of went back and forth. He's arguably the best running back in the league right now. Maybe Derrick Henry.
You could go. People were going to go Derrick Henry. People were going to go Saquon. But right now, 3 or 4 years ago, it might have been a better conversation for me. But right now, Saquon's the best in the league.
Yeah, see if McCaffrey can get back into the mix there next year. But yeah, man. I think you look at this game, kind of an overview, jumping into just kind of the roster breakdown. I really think the roster here, the makeup of the team favors the Eagles. You look around that roster, right? Jalen Hurts, above average quarterback. Saquon Barkley, elite running back. You have A.J. Brown, who finally finished his book on the sideline and is looking like a true alpha receiver and number one. And Devonta Smith, a former Heisman winner, who at times, it looks like they struggle to even get him the ball in games, which is just absurd. They trade for Jahan Dotson. They obviously have Dallas Goedert at tight end, who always seems to be open and just find a soft spot. And then, we'll really get into depth about this, but one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in the NFL. You go, from left to right. Jordan Mailata, who they drafted in the 7th round, Landon Dickerson at left guard, Cam Jurgens at center, Mekhi Becton, who, if you're watching that game versus the Commanders, it's no secret why Saquon's popping these 20-yard runs the way Mekhi Becton is laying out linebackers. And then followed up by Lane Johnson, who they drafted in the first round back in 2013. Just obviously all pro stud.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, and looking at the team as a whole, there have been a lot of things where they go in the offseason and they make moves. You know, they're not someone that stays very stagnant. Think about this. Anybody in the league could have signed Saquon Barkley this offseason. The Giants didn't want to give him his number. I think he did want to be in New York. But I did see a little bit there this a couple, I think it was last week I saw where Chicago was in contention for this guy. But anybody, all they had to do was give this guy a number, and just how he goes and gets it done. He goes and gives Saquon the number that he wants. They pick him up. Like you said, drafting wise, there's been a lot of playmakers brought into this league, and that's or into this team for the league. And just essentially, what are you looking at between him and the Chiefs? That GMs are very important in the game. You know.
Yeah, I see a lot of similarities between Brett Veach and Howie Roseman. The one that kind of sticks out to me is the aggressiveness. Like you mentioned, they go out, they sign Saquon Barkley, they give him the number that he wants. Like you mentioned, any team in the league could have signed him. You know, I don't want to say any team in the league could sign him, but you're around a certain number, you definitely have a chance. But Eagles, really made it a choice to go out and get him. I mean, you continue to look around, right? You trade for A.J. Brown back in 2022. You give up a first-round pick and a third-round pick, who Titans, your favorite team, actually ended up picking Treylon Burks, which, looking back on that, doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is what it is. Draft Devonta Smith, like we mentioned, former Heisman winner. You jump over to the defensive side of the ball. They take Jalen Carter, who a lot of controversy coming out when his draft class came up, the whole ordeal, but they take him at 109, and a lot of success here for him recently this past year. They signed Mekhi Becton, who I mentioned, moved him to right guard. He looks phenomenal. You signed Zach Bond to play linebacker for you, who was on the Saints practice squad last year. And this guy is sideline to sideline making plays every down.
Oh, yeah. Zach Bond is a guy that, honestly, before the season, I knew nothing about. And then all of a sudden, probably week 4 or 5, I'm starting to tune in, and the Eagles, not looking the best, but looking pretty solid. They're still the Eagles, right? We're not going to count them out at any time, but you flip them on, it's all like Zach Bond is always making a play, whether recovering a fumble, interception. I know one game I watched, he's taking one back. He's a bigger guy. He's taking one back, 50 yards down the sidelines, and I'm like, that's a playmaker, and that's what he's became for the Eagles.
Yeah, like you mentioned, kind of that rocky start. They actually got off to a 2-2 start.
Yep.
Beat Green Bay in that international game, lost to Atlanta, bounced back with a win versus New Orleans, lost to Tampa Bay, had their bye week after that, just rattled off.
And I remember Sirianni was really taking it, and I know a couple times he's getting into it with the crowd, and it's like, man, what is this Eagles team doing? They just signed Saquon. This should be wraps for a lot of these teams, but they hung in there, that's for sure.
Yeah, still on that defensive side of the ball. This past year, they draft Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. Really good, promising young corner. And then in that second round, they actually trade up Cooper DeJean, who kind of earlier in the year was getting his feet wet, had some mistakes here and there, but it's really come on as a late. And, you factor in Darius Slay, who's obviously a proven veteran at cornerback there, C.J. Gardner-Johnson in that secondary. Kind of like we mentioned, man, you look at rosters hand on hand here, taking away quarterback especially, this really favors the Eagles in terms of talent, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would definitely go on that. I mean, you look at A.J. Brown, you've got an elite outside threat. You've got Devontae Smith, who, I mean, like you said, he's a Heisman winner. We can't get past the thought of that. And then you look defensively. I mean, that's where you might have a little bit of question in, who's the better team. But offensively and weapons, I think it definitely goes towards the Eagles or favors. I'm not going to say by a landslide, but definitely favors the Eagles.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of a different conversation if Mahomes never blows out Rashee Rice's kneecap in about week 4. But kind of jumping over to the Chiefs side of things, right? Even going back to where it all started, they trade up for Mahomes, trade up to pick 10 to get him. They trade up for McDuffie to bolster that secondary at the time, pairing him with L'Jarius Sneed, who you're welcome as a Titans fan. Miss him a ton. They trade up for Worthy in this past draft, who's really come on strong as of late. Speaking of kind of the construction of the roster and stuff, how big has Hollywood Brown been since he came back, man? I mean, this guy has kind of revived this offense in terms of just another outside playmaker.
And I think we saw that in the past couple games, that there's been a lot of I guess you'd say plays geared towards him. I
Yeah,
remember a game I was watching.
getting him involved for
Yeah,
sure.
and like big shot plays too, not just something that you're looking, a 5 yard and out, 10 yard. I mean, he is consistently. It looks like they're designing the ball to get to him because they want a ball in the playmaker's hands. And I think losing Rasheed Rice early in the season, I think that's something that they've realized that they do need to get him the ball because Rasheed Rice was definitely a vital part in that offense through the first, I think 4 or 5 weeks of the
Yeah,
season.
I definitely have a play for Hollywood Brown when we get into kind of some of our favorite props of the Super Bowl. Continuing on, they go out, they sign Kareem Hunt, who, I mean, my goodness, that's looking like a huge pickup. Now he's toting the rock. Really for the second half of the season. Pacheco went down with the femur injury. He came back. It to me, it doesn't look like he's quite healthy as he normally is. Kind of missing that hard, aggressive running style that he has. So, kind of wonder what the deal is with that. If he came back maybe a little too early, something like that. And even midseason, they trade for DeAndre Hopkins, who I know last week you kind of saw they opted for Juju a little bit more. Juju making a couple plays, but D Hop, it's kind of just like that butterfly effect. If they trade for him, they have him. If they don't trade for him, what does the receiver room look like? Justin Watson's probably playing a little bit more, so it kind of just it all factors in.
I
But
think that's a good point to make there too. Like DeAndre Hopkins, you look at him, and right now we're down the stretch of the playoffs. I don't know how active they've had him or what they've drawn up for him, but during when they got him, they were in kind of a mess trying to find a receiver, get the ball to. So of course they go out and get him, and he performs for enough time. I mean, hell, this team was 15-1. I don't really count the Broncos loss because you're not counting your starters, but this team's 15-1 team. They don't play. They don't. Are they 15-1 without the addition of DeAndre Hopkins? Like we said, I'm not saying that he has been.
and Kareem Hunt.
Yeah,
Definitely, I feel pretty confident saying without Kareem Hunt, you're definitely dropping a couple games, man. He has been the life of this run game. I mean, you even saw it. He punched that on the first drive in versus the Bills in the AFC Championship game. He finishes the drive with a touchdown. He's looked phenomenal, and it's really to no surprise because him and Reed they had that relationship. He was already there. He knows the system, so it's not a shock to me that he's performing so well. Kind of to mention what you said about DeAndre Hopkins, where he's kind of getting phased out versus Buffalo, 2 targets, 1 catch for 11 yards, and then Houston, he did not receive it. He did not record a reception. So, like I kind of touched on, Juju, uh, they're opting for Juju and more of that wide receiver 3 role, just kind of similar to Kareem Hunt. He's been here, he knows the system, he knows what Andy Reid expects of him. So they're just kind of opting for more of that comfortability factor, I believe.
yeah, I would agree with that. When you look into the Chiefs, I mean, you look in the Chiefs. Yeah, they have Travis Kelsey. They've had that outlet guy for as long as Mahomes has been there. Even actually further, they had Smith. He was there when Smith was there. So you're looking at a guy who continually puts up numbers for him. But just additions to. I know during the season it seemed like Kelsey had two shadow him at sometimes. When you put other guys in a position where they can get open, like DeAndre Hopkins, just popping on my head, you have DeAndre Hopkins who is able to run a 10 yard stop route. He gets the ball, and you could trust him to catch the ball. Just little additions like that through the season, and even in the playoffs, it gives Andy Reid options of what he wants to do, where he wants to exploit the defense.
Yeah. Then hopping into the trenches here for the Chiefs, kind of later towards the end of the year, they kicked out Joe Thuney from left guard to left tackle, which had to be done because the left tackle situation for the Chiefs has been a problem all year. They tried out Kingsley Suamata, who they drafted from BYU in the second round, didn't work out. Wanya Morris, a former tackle from Oklahoma, I believe, also just didn't work out. They signed DJ Humphries late in the season. That didn't work out as well. So they finally kicked Thuney out and have, uh, fix the left tackle position, but at what cost? Because at left guard, Mike Caliendo is not the best. He's going to have his hands full with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter Sunday. That matchup really, really scares me, especially if Fangio can kind of put Davis and Carter in the right position. And then rounding it out, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, 2 studs filling in that center and right guard. And then Jawan Taylor, who you're probably due for a full starting game, but when all is said, he's a serviceable right tackle.
Yeah, yeah, that is definitely the point. Like you said, the offensive line, defensive line, that's going to be a very critical part of the game.
It'll be
Simple as
something
that.
to watch this game.
Yep, yeah, they're between Lane Johnson, Yamada. I don't even know how to say that guy's last name, Malata, I believe. And then you look at Humphrey and the guys on the Chiefs offensive line, and then additionally, you go and look at the defensive line for, Carter and these guys on the Eagles defensive line, and then, Chris Jones, who obviously one of the best defensive players in the league. This game going to be in the trenches.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to no surprise, right? These teams have invested a ton of draft capital into the trenches in general. As we mentioned, Lane Johnson was a first-round pick. I believe Landon Dickerson, who plays one of the guard spots for the Eagles, is a first-round pick. Creed Humphrey, high second round, I believe. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Karlaftis was a first-round pick. So these guys have invested heavily into the trenches for sure. You hop over to the defensive side of the ball for the Chiefs. Speaking of Karlaftis, who has yet to not play in a Super Bowl in his NFL career, which is insane. Same with McDuffie as well. So they'll be rolling out in the front, Chris Jones, Karlaftis, Mike Dana. But I think, where we were talking about the Saquon Barkley, how are they going to stop him, right? I think it starts with that linebacking core for the Chiefs. Drew Tranquil, Nick Bolton, and Leo Chenal are elite run stoppers. Now, I think they got exposed a little bit in that game versus the Bills, like you mentioned. James Cook was kind of going crazy there for a while. Not sure why Joe Brady got away from that for sure. But, if those guys at that linebacking core comes to play, I think we're looking at a pretty tight game, and Jalen Hurts is going to have to throw the ball.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that is what the Chiefs are going to come out and attempt to do. You stop the run, you make Jalen Hurts, who I said through the playoffs, kind of had some shaky numbers. Last week was a different story, but he's had some, or 2 weeks ago was a different story. But in the playoffs, he hasn't proven that, he's a guy that's going to go give you 275, 300 yards. Like, it's going to be very hard for them to win out of the air. But additionally, what team's going to, when you have Saquon Barkley on the team, the goal isn't to drop back and pass the ball 30, 35 times, 40 times a game. So if the Chiefs can make the Eagles throw the ball, up in the 30, 30, 35, that's going to be where you're leaning towards the Chiefs, I guess you'd say. Yep.
Yeah, rounding out that Chiefs secondary, obviously Trent McDuffie, first-round pick, Justin Reed, who they brought from Houston, Brian Cook from Cincinnati, Jalen Watson, who actually just came back from the ankle injury. It'd be interesting to see. I think he's kind of an X factor in this game, because if he can play at a high level and give Devonta Smith or A.J. Brown, I'd have to imagine that McDuffie's going to shadow A.J. Brown a lot in this game. So, is Hurts and Kellen Moore, are they going to go after Jalen Watson kind of coming fresh off that injury? We'll see. And then obviously Jaden Hicks, who they just drafted. So talent all over the place for this team, for both of these teams, and that's to no surprise. So it kind of brings me to my point, Noah. I do see an edge in this game, and that is the X's and O's over the Jimmy and Joes. Vic Fangio, former head coach for the Denver Broncos, this past year, defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins, is 0-8 versus Patrick Mahomes in the Andy Reid and Mahomes era. So I believe Andy Reid and Matt Nagy both kind of have that upper hand in terms of the play calling, more so Andy Reid calling the plays versus Vic Fangio, because he's 0-8. I mean, they've yet to kind of figure Mahomes out.
Yeah, and I think that's something to look at. Is Mahomes itself, we can compare all these. I mean, Josh Allen just won the MVP. Joe Burrow had a great season. Not much team success than Lamar did, but Lamar had an awesome season as well. These are all quality and quarterbacks that you can definitely start a franchise around, right? But you can ask any GM in the business, and most of them are going to tell you, you want a winner. You want a winner at the quarterback position, and that's what Patrick Mahomes has done. It's what he continues to do. That is the guy where you're looking at the X's and O's. The X's and O's work because Patrick Mahomes knows what the game plan is when he goes out there.
Yeah, and you see that a lot now. Kind of the conversation as well. What does Mahomes look like if he doesn't have Reed, and sort of that thing, and really the answer to that is why even speculate on it, because you're never going to know until Andy Reid retires and whoever they decide to take over. You're never going to know.
Yeah.
So I kind of look at it that way, and then flip flop. I see an advantage with Spags versus Kellen Moore. This would be the biggest game that Kellen Moore is calling in his life. Former OC for the Chargers, now over here with the Eagles. Both him and Fangio, very, very, very highly paid coordinators. I believe Fangio is making somewhere around $5 million as a coordinator, which is a lot. So, they heavily invested. Sirianni, more of that game manager role. It seems like, Eagles guys, they get up to play for him, so really no complaints as far as Sirianni, unless he's getting in the fans, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, getting in the fights with the fans.
Yeah, talking his ish for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I see Spags drawing up some stuff to really stun Kellen Moore. this, Kellen Moore kind of linked to that Saints job. So really, where's his head at? He's definitely here, present, building a game plan to beat the Chiefs. But that stuff takes a toll on you for sure. You're doing interviews, maybe flew out, stuff like that. So
Yeah, it's a lot of belief from
for him.
belief from the Lions that Ben Johnson took the Bears head coaching job before he got through the playoffs. That's what it seemed like. But
yeah, and who was it? You said he called his was it his defensive coordinator Dennis Allen?
Dennis Allen,
the
yeah,
Saints?
yeah, he called Dennis
him,
Allen.
like he mentioned, Dennis Allen kind of saw his fate down there in New Orleans, and Ben Johnson calling him, "Hey, if I get this job, you want to come be my DC." So yeah, there's some stuff behind the scenes that these guys, the writing's on the wall, man. These guys aren't dumb.
Yep.
So,
yeah, they know where they're going or what their intentions
sure.
are for the next season. That is for sure.
So to factor all that into kind of my prediction, I really think the game plan from Spags and Andy Reid, along with Mahomes, until I know they lost that Super Bowl to Tampa Bay a couple years ago to Tom Brady, but until they stop consistently, keyword consistently, getting to these big games, the AFC Championship, the Super Bowl, I'm never not going to go against the Chiefs and Mahomes.
Yeah, I think financially that's the smartest thing you can do. You stay with the team that has been there twice. You stay with the quarterback that's just won it twice in a row. And there's been no signs through the playoffs, definitely, that Patrick Mahomes isn't ready for the test again. Jalen Hurts has been very solid in everything in the season. Yeah, his passing numbers are down, but like I said, you're not going to draw back and throw the ball 40 times a game when you have Saquon in your backfield. So I definitely believe that if you're gonna take the money line, and I think the line, what is it, 1.5 right now, -1.5 towards the Chiefs.
Yeah. So the line is back up to 1.5. It's kind of had some crazy movement here as we get closer to game time. It got up to as high as Chiefs -2.5, and then bounced back down to 1 actually. And as we were recording, this has actually dropped to a pick'em game. When the line opened up, it was Eagles around +110. That has now dropped to a pick'em at 104, -104 for the Eagles, -112 for the Chiefs, sitting at a total for the over/under 48.5. Before we kind of jump into some props that we like and kind of a parlay that we were both looking at, you have a score prediction.
I do have a score prediction. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and lie to anybody like I'm going to choose against Patrick Mahomes. 27-24 Chiefs. I think it's a low-scoring game. I think the over-under on this game is 49.5, so I think that does surpass at 51. So maybe take the over, but I'm definitely more in the money line scheme of things because you're getting it at such good odds, in my opinion.
Yeah, even value.
Yeah, even value. I definitely take the money line for the Chiefs, but 27-24, I would go.
Yeah, so I'm actually right up that alley. I think you're looking at a score somewhere around the 28-24, both teams in the 20s. I think the key to this game for the Chiefs is to stop the run early, force Jalen Hurts to beat you with his arm, kind of let the cards fall where they may. Like I kind of mentioned, if Hurts is going to beat you through the air, tip your cap, and so be it. But yeah, man, I'm rolling with Mahomes.
Before we get into player props here, or I guess kind of to go hand in hand with the player props here, just a little fun fact here. I didn't know this till I saw it pop up on Twitter the other day, or X, I guess I should say. Niners linebacker Dre Greenlaw in the last Super Bowl. We know he got hurt with the injury on the sidelines. I think he was celebrating, getting ready to go back on the field. He was replaced by Oren Burks. Okay? So I know you're probably thinking, where are you going with this? In that game, in the last Super Bowl, Oren Burks was tested with the job for Kelsey, right? He's guarding Kelsey. Kelsey was targeted 9 times and had 9 receptions. So Oren Burks, you're probably thinking, what does that have to do with this Super Bowl? N'Kobe Dean is hurt for this Super Bowl. He is at the Eagles. Oren Burks followed him, and he will replace him in this Super Bowl. So if you're looking for somebody to have a day, it might be as simple as Travis Kelsey.
Yeah, it might not be something to overthink for sure. That is crazy. Oren Burks going to be deemed with that task again. And I really wonder if we'll see more of C.J. Gardner-Johnson or maybe a Reed Blankenship drop down from that safety position to really shadow and cover Kelsey, because are they going to roll the dice again with that linebacker, Oren Burks, or any of those guys guarding Kelsey?
And that's another thing too. You throw the safety on him. Does that favor you as well because of the size differential? Between what a safety is, and not saying that Travis Kelsey's huge, but definitely has better size than what a safety would.
Yeah, for sure. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, about 5'11", 210. So, yeah, definitely kind of a. We'll see what Fangio does. We have to play his cards right in that game. So, kind of shifting gears here.
Yeah, let's make some money, Gage.
Talking.
Let's make some money.
Yeah. Let's try, huh? We've definitely had our couple rough beats here recently, so it's time to get some money for sure. Go ahead, you start us off, man. You see a prop that you like?
So just to kind of give a little bit of an overview of this, we're going to try and put together some parlays here over our whole series that we'll do: NFL, college basketball, everything. But just for right now, just for the parlay, I would take 100 rushing plus receiving yards for Saquon. So I think that's pretty much a no-brainer. For us to sit here and say that Saquon isn't going to bust one, I think we'd be kind of fooling ourselves, not saying it gets in the end zone, but just to break, one 30, 40-yard run. I think that's very possible.
Yeah, you're looking at Barkley, his line 128.5, so we're actually buying it down to 100, which I don't mind. And like you mentioned, busting a big run or something like that. Let's also not forget the fact I really don't think that Kenneth Gainwell is going to be seeing a lot of touches or snaps in general in this game. I think they're going to roll Barkley out there for a majority of the third downs and maybe a third and long or something. He catches one in the flat and picks up, 11 to 20 yard gain and really helps out in the receiving game.
Yeah. What would be your play here? What would be something you'd add?
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of going polar opposite of my pick of the who I think would win the Super Bowl. I actually like Patrick Mahomes under for passing yards at 250.5. We talked a little bit about the trenches in this game, how much talent is on that defensive line, and just all over the field on the defensive side of the ball for the Eagles. I also mentioned Mike Caliendo, who's going to have his hands full with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. I just think this is going to be a little bit too big of a number for Mahomes to go past 250. I see kind of a slow start in this game, which I'll jump into a prop there later after we finish this parlay. But I just think 250 is a little high.
Yeah, 250, and it's not like a 200-yard passing game isn't anything to downfall. If Mahomes comes out throws 200, 225, there's not saying that the Chiefs don't win that football game. But like you said, you're getting a lot of pressure from the defensive line. You don't have time, and let's not overlook here. The cornerbacks for the Eagles are pretty solid. So it's not like I don't think they get the same defense that the Bills gave them, where these guys are just stopping at 10 yards and they're throwing first downs.
Yeah, factor in the fact that it's no secret the Eagles are going to try and run the ball. If they are successful with that, it's going to chunk that clock.
Yeah, especially the tush push. I mean, you give the tush push on 4th and 1 or even 3rd and 1, that takes these drives from maybe 1 minute to 2 minutes till you're like shit. Patrick Mahomes hadn't had the ball in 7 minutes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Passing it back to you, man. You see, let's talk about your boy AJ Brown.
Yeah, so that is my next play there. AJ Brown, he had a better game last week, right? Like we said, he's reading his book. He finally finished the book last week, and he had one of the performances we've been waiting on. I just think they have his yards at 60 and a half, I believe is his yard.
69 and a half.
69 and a half, so even better in my things. But I think he goes under that. Not saying that he's not going to have a couple catches where, maybe 10, 15-yard catches. I don't think McDuffie lets him break down the sidelines for his goal ball that he usually gets every 3 or 4 times they touch the ball, he gets one of those. I don't think he has success there. So I could see maybe a 6 or 7 targets for him, but off that 6 or 7 targets, does he get 69? I don't think so. I don't think he gets 69.
Looking at his playoffs, right outside of that game versus Washington, where he had 6 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown, like we mentioned after he finished the book. Looking at Green Bay, he had 1 catch for 10 yards and then 2 catches for 14 yards versus the Rams. So there's been some up and down, some controversy earlier in the season. Him and Jalen Hurts kind of going back and forth in the media, and then you kind of just think about his season in general in the regular season. He's not a very high volume receiver. He's not typically a 6 to 8 catch receiver. He's more in that 4 to 5 range with maybe a deep ball or something.
Yeah, and I think that's what when they get to that 20 or 30 yard line, I think that's the first thing their brain goes to. All right, if AJ Brown can beat his guy by 2 steps, all right, let's just throw it up to the back ends and let him go get it. I think that's where we see some of his yards come from. Where I think McDuffie's going to have a situation where that those options or those passing attempts aren't going to be easy, or nor is he going to complete one of those.
Yeah, so last time we were talking about this, Noah, I actually went with Devonta Smith over his line of 52.5 receiving yards. I just kind of like his matchup versus Jalen Watson if McDuffie is to shadow A.J. Brown. But the more I look into it, the more I see things clearly. I actually, like you just touched on, I like this matchup for Travis Kelce. I'm going to alt him down. I like 50 receiving yards from him.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's I'm not going to say a no-brainer, but that's definitely something that you're looking at, and you're like, okay, if he can get this, if he can catch 2 or 3 passes where he gets 10, 12 yards, then you're looking at his regular, he gets a 5-yard curl on third down. There's not too much that has to happen for Travis Kelce to get 50 yards.
Yeah, and this guy, he's going to show up to play. This is
Yeah, it's a Super Bowl.
Super Bowl. Yeah, these guys, everybody comes ready to play, but it seems like Kelsey and
Yeah,
Mahomes even more.
are
the brightest.
is this going to be is this going to be Kelsey's last Super Bowl? That's a question you need to ask. If it is, you know how he's going to go out, right?
You know how he's going to go out, 100%. So with those 4 picks, we're looking at the Saquon Barkley 100 rushing and receiving yards, Mahomes under 250 and a half, AJ Brown under 69 and a half, and then Kelsey alt 50 receiving yards. $50 here would win you 319, sitting at plus 638 odds.
I think always the thing I do with parlays, if you're going to put $10 on it, $5 on it, a big thing to look into is add a touchdown score to that. That's going to take your odds, up to maybe the plus 1,000. Turn 10 into 100. That's always a good night. That'll buy your wings and pizza for Super Bowl night anyway. So I'm going to say add your favorite touchdown score. My favorite touchdown score, we just hit on him, Travis Kelce. What do you like? What do you like in that touchdown score?
Yeah, so actually what you just touched on, just for the people listening, don't have it pulled up. If you were to add a Travis Kelce anytime touchdown score, $50 would return you 765. On the flip side for the Eagles, if you were to add Barkley for the anytime touchdown, it would take your parlay to plus 960 to win 480.
Yeah.
Outside of the parlay, no, I actually have a couple plays that I really liked. One being a very slight sprinkle on the Hollywood Brown touchdown. As you saw, they've really kind of got him more and more involved as he's come back into this offense. I think he's a sneaky guy to score a touchdown this Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. He kind of reminds me of Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman, he's had a couple situations where you think the moment's too big, and then he goes ahead and gets you a touchdown. He gets you a 2-point conversion. Big time players make big time plays, and I think this is where Hollywood Brown,
game winning catch in the Super Bowl last year.
Yep. So I do think this is a situation where Hollywood Brown could find himself in the end zone dancing.
Yeah, definitely like that. And then the last solo prop that I really liked was the first half total under 24.5.
Yeah, especially.
Go ahead.
Yeah, looking at what we predicted, 24, 27, 28, 24, that's our final score. So you're looking at 50 some points. Both these teams aren't going to let the cat out of the bag early, right? Neither team's going to let the other team run away with it early. You're looking at something where, if Philly has 4 sustained drives, I mean, how many times does Kansas City get the ball in the first half? Or vice versa, if the Chiefs get the ball, 2 or 3 times and they end up with field goals, how many times does Philadelphia get the ball? So I like that under.
Yeah, 100%. And then, also, what do things look like if the Eagles are able to run the ball consistently? Like you kind of just touched on, the Chiefs not going to be able to touch the ball, and it takes 2 teams, in my opinion.
And I think the best case scenario you're seeing in this first half is 14-10. Well, there you go. You got your under at 24.5.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe 10-7 something.
Yeah. So that exactly.
10.
That's exactly.
Yeah. Any other props that you want to touch on before we kind of transition over to awards?
I think I'm ready for awards, Gage. What about you?
Yeah, man, I'm ready. Last thing on the Super Bowl, man, just obviously rooting for a good game in general. I think this will be a good one. Eagles' second Super Bowl in 3 years. Chiefs obviously back going for the three-peat. So a lot of storylines in this game. Can Hurts get over the hump? One
little extra prop here I want to throw in. What color's the Gatorade going to be?
Haha, give me red.
Give me red. I'm going to go yellow.
Give me red. And then also give me Kendrick Lamar first song, give me Squabble Up.
All right. Little fun props if anybody does that.
Yep. So yeah, man, that's all we got for the Super Bowl. So transition over here to the NFL honors for this 2025 season. Josh Allen obviously bringing home the MVP, Noah. Any thoughts on this?
I do have some thoughts there. I believe was it Lamar second place in voting there?
Yeah, I'll touch on this real quick before you get going here. Josh Allen, 27 first place votes. Lamar Jackson, 23 first place votes. The only 2 players to receive MVP votes.
So I mean,
I'm sorry, to receive first place votes.
okay, yep, gotcha. Don't mind. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that Josh Allen didn't have a great season. He did. I think he benefited a little bit from the rushing touchdown department where he's getting pushed into the end zone, and I don't think we look into it too much. If it's me, if I'm picking, and it's kind of blasphemous that I think that he didn't get a vote, it's a guy in the Super Bowl. I think winning matters, and I think winning big games matters. Saquon Barkley. I mean, I don't know if anybody really agrees with me on this take. If with Jalen Hurts passing yards being so far down this year, and him not being, him trying to prove himself as a passer, if they don't have Saquon Barkley, are the Eagles in the position they're in now? I can say no, they're not. Without Saquon Barkley, the Eagles, for one, I don't think they make the Super Bowl. Two, some of these games that they're winning, like we said, 3 or 4 yards at a time. I think he rushed for over 2,000 yards a year or this year, and outside of that, I think he's 13 touchdowns. I think that's what he had.
Yeah, so he led the NFL this year with 2,005 rushing yards, 13 total touchdowns. But kind of as you touched on, I believe Jalen Hurts had maybe mid-teens rushing touchdowns. I'll get you. Go ahead, continue on. I'll get you.
So exactly what we're saying here, and the point, we're just getting an exact number on it. But if Jalen Hurts isn't the rushing threat he is, and say Saquon plays with a quarterback who doesn't rush the football, how many more rushing touchdowns are we looking at? I mean, this guy provided so much offense in situations where they needed it. It's crazy to me. Not saying that Saquon, I do believe Saquon should have won it, but I could see where people go Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. I could see that. It's just crazy to me that you don't receive a vote. You don't receive a vote at all.
So Jalen Hurts actually finishes the year with one more touchdown than Saquon Barkley with 14 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, so look at that. So if you give him, just say,
six,
seven of them. So he's got 2,000 yards, 20 touchdowns. I mean, that is, to look at that, and I know the MVP, I think that's what really gets at me, is the MVP is a quarterback award. I don't love that it is. And I know that's the world we're living in right now, but to not even consider Saquon Barkley to be the MVP of the league.
Yeah, last running back to actually win the MVP award was Adrian Peterson with the Vikings back in 2012, which, funny enough, he had right around 2,000 rushing yards in that season.
Yeah, so I know the game's changed a lot since 2012 and before that, but Saquon, I think, was a guy who deserved it, and I think he proved himself that he can be a vocal point of offense that is very successful.
Yeah, so I think you and I kind of both agree they got this one wrong. I wasn't a huge fan, not taking anything away from Josh Allen, but as we're watching the game, Ravens versus Bills, Tony Romo kind of touches on the fact that MVP voters say that this game will have no effect on the voting. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, sure, the winner of this game is winning MVP, and I'm not opposed to that. But if we're gonna keep it real, then I don't like the fact that the voters are coming out saying that playoff wins and stuff don't matter. Touching on some facts here, right?
Yeah, if playoff wins don't matter, Joe Burrow. Go ahead.
Yeah. Lamar Jackson, 4,172 passing yards. Josh Allen, 3,731. Lamar, 41 passing touchdowns compared to Allen's 28. You get into the before that, we get into the rushing side of things. Lamar, 4 interceptions. Josh Allen, 6, which is kind of irrelevant because Allen actually had a pretty good year in terms of
compared to what he's been, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, getting to the rushing side of things, 139 rushing attempts for Lamar, 915 yards with 4 touchdowns. Allen, 102 rushing attempts, 531 yards, and 12 rushing touchdowns. So outside of just rushing touchdowns, Lamar statistically led Josh Allen in terms of everything else.
Yeah, and like you said, rushing touchdowns, if you're on the 1 yard and you're the Baltimore Ravens, you're not going to give it to Lamar when you have Derrick Henry.
You're handing it to Derrick Henry.
So, yeah, he's going to result from, not going to say the tush push because it's nothing like Philly, but Josh Allen at 6'5" stature, they're going to give the ball to him at the 1 yard line, and he's going to sneak it in.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of like you touched on too. I mean, Derrick Henry, just having him in that backfield affects Lamar's rushing numbers as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you and I both kind of disagree with that, the MVP. But congratulations to Josh Allen, nothing less.
Yeah.
Still hasn't been to a Super Bowl. So.
He can finance that wedding.
Yeah. Funny enough, just throw this out here. Since 2023, both Lamar and Allen 0-5, 0-3 versus Mahomes in the playoffs.
Yep.
So,
Simple as that.
Yeah. So let's hop into the next one, which he didn't win MVP, but he did win Offensive Player of the Year. Saquon Barkley. I think I more so have a take on this, unless there's anything that you want to touch on about Barkley.
Nothing I
At
really
least,
want to. Nothing I really want to touch
getting
on.
getting him Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah,
Well deserving.
exactly nothing I want to touch on here. Like I said, they gave him this because he didn't get MVP, in my opinion. So just go ahead. I know you have a better take on this than.
Yeah, so Saquon comes in with 35 first place votes. Lamar Jackson comes in second with 12 place votes, which feels like a pity for him not winning MVP. They're throwing him 12 first place votes for Offensive Player of the Year. For the fact that Jamar Chase winning Triple Crown and did not receive one first place vote is a little absurd to me, Noah. Jamar Chase Triple Crown, 127 receptions, 1,700 yards, and 17 touchdowns.
Yeah, those are crazy numbers. For a receiver to have a season like that, and you do have to look at the. Not saying that we have to evaluate things this way, but the way the media looks at it, wins and losses, and you might look at Jamar and say, he was stat padded because they were down in so many games. No, you can't say that because Jamar Chase didn't go out and sign that defense this offseason. Jamar Chase did what he did to keep them in games. Simple as that.
Yeah, you can't critique. I mean, you have to play with what's in front of you and the circumstances that you're kind of dealt with. So the fact that they are maybe behind in games a lot because of the defense not being very good isn't a fault of both Burrow and Jamar Chase. So I just thought that was very odd. Actually, Tom Brady gave his first place vote to Joe Thuney, which was interesting to say the least. Rounding that out, Derrick Henry got one first place vote for Offensive Player of the Year, and Joe Burrow actually won as well. So not much to really touch on there. I think they got it right as far as Saquon. I just, I found that really interesting that Jamar Chase 0 votes. I didn't really like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that take. Like I said, do I disagree with Offensive Player of the Year because the way MVP fell down? No, but if cases were different, I do think there's definitely a viable consideration for Jamar.
One, I think we both agree on Defensive Player this year, Pat Surtain, better known as PS2, quarterback for the Broncos. Kind of flew under the radar this year just because a lot of people aren't turning on Bronco games. It was a sneaky team, made the playoffs with the roster that really, not as good as others. Some just crazy numbers for Surtain this year. Throughout the entire regular season, he gave up just 2 touchdowns and 306 receiving yards.
Yeah, that is ridiculous, and I think this is an award that has been overtaken by edge rushers because that's what we've seen. T.J. Watt, Myles Garrett, those are both solid players, but for a cornerback to put up those numbers where when he's on the field you're not looking his way, right? There's not even a receiver over there because PS2's there, so right. So I think this is a breath of fresh air with a cornerback winning this award.
Yeah, definitely. I obviously watch him 2 times a year when they play the Chiefs, and yeah, it's true, man. I mean, you can go ahead and chalk out whoever is lining up across him. He's pretty much out of the play. Kind of like you touched on, kind of seems to be an edge award. He beat out Trey Hendrickson, who had 11 first-place votes, Myles Garrett with 5, T.J. Watt with 3, and Zach Bond with 2. Showing some love to Zach Bond, but yeah, it was definitely good to see a cornerback win one. And yeah, man. Any other thoughts there for Defensive Player of the Year before we move on?
No, I like where that went, and I think, like we said, we're both in agreement that that's nice that a cornerback won it, and additionally, just think PS2 deserved it.
Yeah, you and I both agree as well with Jaden Daniels, Offensive Rookie of the Year. I know I actually let you go ahead and touch on somebody you thought should have received a couple more votes.
With Offensive Player or Rookie of the Year.
Brock Bowers, Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, sorry. Offensive Rookie of the Year. I was going to say, thought we were different. But anyways, Brock Bowers, I think, definitely should have won this award. Not because Jaden Daniels isn't deserving of the consideration, but let's not forget, Jaden Daniels had Cliff Kingsbury by his side the whole year. And I think that's very undervalued. Kingsbury came in, put an offense in that he knew Jaden Daniels could run it and things that he could understand easily. Now, Jaden Daniels did have success, but this is a thing where I think success in the season is, especially for, Offensive Rookie of the Year, this is a situation where you can't buy into the wins and losses, right? Because Jaden Daniels was drafted by the Commanders. Brock Bowers is drafted by the Raiders. looking at the game, looking at the season, who do you think is going to have the better season? In my opinion, yeah, the Commanders are going to have a better season. Brock Bowers receiving, his receptions, his receiving yards, those were all things, those were all rookie records, right? Those were rookie records, and we're just going to go ahead and toss him to the side because he has Gardner Minshew. And that makes it even more impressive. Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell are throwing him the football.
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell, who you can find at your local Home Depot, and then Gardner Minshew, who you can find at your local Lowe's. So
Yeah.
two guys who, obviously in the market for a quarterback. But Brock Bowers, 112 receptions on the year with almost 1,200 yards and 5 touchdowns. Obviously, touchdowns a little bit down, but probably due to quarterback play for sure. And the almost 1,200 yards tied for 8th in the league. And I mean, we're also talking that's with receivers too, some elite receivers.
Jacoby Myers is a great guy, and Tucker had a pretty good season for him as well, Trey Tucker. So
yeah,
I do like
Devontae Adams there at
early
the beginning of the year as well before he got traded. Yeah, for sure. I was a fan of this. I think they got it right. I was Jaden Daniels, man. What a story this was. Like you kind of said, he walked into a great situation with Cliff Kingsbury, but I really don't know if people are giving him the flowers that he deserves in terms of, we're talking about a team where their wide receiver 2 down the stretch, especially in the playoffs, was Diami Brown, which no offense to Diami Brown, but you kind of look at some of the rest of the teams in the playoffs, or I'm sorry, the makeup of the teams in the playoffs. Outside of the Packers, a lot of these teams had a really good 1-2 punch at receiver. I think Cooper Kupp kind of fell off towards the end of the year, but him paired with Puka Nacua, Worthy, Hollywood Brown, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, just some names to throw out. I mean, they were rolling out Diami Brown,
Zacchaeus' son,
Luke McCaffrey. So your two main targets were Terry McLaurin and 30-some-year-old Zach Ertz. So I really thought he had a tremendous season. And say what you want about the playoff games not mattering, but it shows with the Josh Allen versus Lamar that playoff wins do matter in this voting.
Yep, I agree with that. So what are we at? Defensive Rookie of the Year now?
I was just spit out real quick. Jaden Daniels. Get this pull up real quick. Jaden Daniels ends his year with roughly 3,600 passing, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Obviously, leading us to an NFC Championship where nobody even saw that team escaping the wild card. We were both pretty high on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This playoff.
Yeah, I thought this was the year Baker and them get to the NFC Championship. They were one game away last year. Thought Baker went ahead and did it, and got to that game this year. But unfortunately, that's not how it happened. But definitely kudos to Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, pair on the game-winning drive where they went down and kicked that field goal to beat the Bucs 23-20. Then they walk into Detroit, walk in Yo-Trap, take over Yo-Trap, win as 10-point underdogs, beating Detroit 45-31. And then, of course, nobody's really batting your eye that you got beat by the Eagles. They just didn't match up physically very well.
Yeah, playing that run game, you have to have some run stoppers, and defensively they didn't have that.
Yeah, 100%. So well-deserved Jaden Daniels. Moving on, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Jared Verse, which we won't really touch on. Quinyon Mitchell received 9 first-place votes, and then Jared Verse's teammate from Florida State, also on the Rams as well, Braden Fisk, receiving 1 first-place vote. Verse kind of towards the end of the year really
separated,
in my opinion.
Yeah, he separated himself from the competition. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he ended the season with about 4.5 sacks. So, but his pressure rates were insane.
Yep.
Very good edge rusher, and
that's Rams culture, though. That's what Rams do. They seem like they definitely get some draft picks in the building, and they develop them.
Absolutely. And then you and I kind of had the same idea and thoughts about Comeback Player of the Year, Joe Burrow, for the second time.
Yeah, I'm not really big on this award because what really qualifies somebody for Comeback Player of the Year? Yeah, he did play last year, hurt his wrist, comes back. I just don't see. For one, I don't see the point in this whenever you have Sam Darnold down there, where Sam Darnold is definitely came out of nowhere this year and shocked the league. I loved Sam Darnold and that he was able to revive himself. I know during playoffs it got kind of shaky, and the week before whenever they played the Lions, I know things were kind of questionable. What is this Viking team's going to do? But just hands down, I think Sam Darnold. Whenever you ask somebody about the league this year, what's the most surprising thing? Sam Darnold, right? I think that's no doubt in my mind. That's why I think Sam Darnold is Comeback Player of the Year.
Yeah, Sam Darnold receiving 8 first-place votes, and actually second-place votes, the most J.K. Dobbins, which pretty well deserving too, coming off that second Achilles injury. He received 3 first-place votes with 22 second. I kind of thought that this was kind of like a pity me award. Burrow put up some really good numbers this year. He doesn't win MVP. He doesn't win Offensive Player of the Year. So it's kind of just like, here, take an award. We recognize what you did, but this is the best we can give you. So we're going to give you Comeback Player of the Year again. And this is obviously coming off the wrist injury from last year, and then the first time he received it was after the ACL injury.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I understand why they gave that to him. It was like an award where, hey, look, you definitely qualified for a lot of the awards we've given, but you weren't really considered for them. So here, we'll slap this one to you. But like I said, Darnold, Dobbins, and hell, let's talk about the guy who literally died on the field and came back, Damar Hamlin.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna touch on that. That guy's probably thinking, Damar's probably thinking to himself, what? What else do I have to do to win this award, man?
Yeah.
Crazy for sure. Just a small one that we won't really touch on. Ben Johnson won Assistant Coach of the Year, well deserved. Obviously taking over the Chicago Bears. Excited to see what he can do. I guess I can kind of run this take in real quick. It's a shame that Caleb Williams had to deal with Matt Eberflus and Shane Waldron in year one. It just absolutely killed him. And you could see in terms of what Daniels did with the right situation with Cliff Kingsbury and then Dan Quinn, and then the opposite with Eberflus.
Just hope hope the habits are quickly forgotten coming into this year with Ben Johnson, who is going to scheme up an offense where he can definitely provide a solid quarterback play.
Yeah, definitely. Ben Johnson won that pretty clearly. Actually, second place with first place was Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator of the Lions, who got absolutely gutted this coaching carousel. So Joe Brady receiving 2 votes there, 2 first place votes in the bottom. You and I kind of talked about Joe Brady potentially being a guy we're talking about head coaching spots next hiring cycle.
Yeah, I think what Joe Brady did this year with Josh Allen and the Bills, I mean, hell, his quarterback won most valuable player, right? So Joe Brady put in a system that definitely benefited Josh Allen, and something that we haven't seen in Josh Allen offenses. It seemed like Josh Allen had to be the hero the past couple years, and this year Josh Allen, there was that one game against, I think, the Rams with that huge shootout. Was that big shootout? I think kind of earlier in the year where he did play Superman, but he put a lot of...
Yeah, went crazy in fantasy.
Yeah, put a lot of stress off of Josh Allen being the hero, whereas his scheme, got people open.
Yeah, Joe Brady, of course, took over for Ken Dorsey, and the Buffalo offense has definitely excelled since he's been there. So definitely a name that we'll be talking about next year as well. Kind of round things out, man. I'll let you get into it first. Coach of the Year, Kevin O'Connell. I didn't like this one. Don't know if you changed your mind on it, but let me hear your thoughts.
No, I definitely think this is the only place you can look. I mean, I do understand there are other good coaches in the league. I think Dan Campbell was in second with so many votes, but how do you give the head coach the award whenever he has the best assistant coach by his side in Ben Johnson? So I don't think that's a place you look. And Glenn.
Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn becoming head coaches.
So, yeah, I think Dan Campbell is a good head coach, but I don't think, we're going to see next year how good he is. So just looking at Kevin O'Connell, I mean, you get a guy who, look what the Jets did with him. Look he backed up at the 49ers for a long time. So You're looking at these teams, looking at a player who hasn't really had an impactful NFL career, right? You bring him in, your rookie quarterback you draft has to have surgery. He's done for the year. You realize that you're like, oh shit, what do we do here? You take Sam Darnold, you put an offense in, and you scheme him up to show what he's best at, and he goes out and performs, and they win 14 games, Gage. 14 games. They lost to the Lions twice.
Yeah, absolutely smashed their win total set by Vegas preseason. They were predicted for roughly around 6.5 wins, and like you kind of just mentioned, they soared over it. So from that aspect of things, I definitely understand where this award can be given to him. But like you just mentioned, it just leaves a very sour taste in my mouth, the collapse that they had at the end of the season. You lose to Detroit late in the year to lose your first round bye, which ultimately you play the Rams in the first round of the wild card and get blown out 27-9. I just think we kind of need to slow our roll here with O'Connell. I think he is a good coach, but let's not forget the first time he made the playoffs back in 2022 with Kirk Cousins, they lost to Brian Dable and Daniel Jones, the New York Giants.
That is valid statement there, and I do understand that point. But to me, just bringing in a quarterback who isn't proven, and you do that, that's
Yeah, Darnold, 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Definitely a revival season. We'll see how much money he potentially lost himself going into free agency if, the Vikings deem to make McCarthy their guy going forward. So, but yeah, I don't know. I like some of the other names in this. I don't know as far as winning the award, but I think it should have been closer than what it was. I like Dan Quinn, what he did with Washington, and then kind of the same with Sean Payton as well. Kind of taking a bottom tier roster with rookie quarterback, sneaking into the playoffs. I don't know, man. I wasn't too big on the Kevin O'Connell award, but I definitely understand considering where they were preseason.
yep. I do agree with that.
So I think it's going to wrap it up for episode 1, guys. Really appreciate it. Noah and I have dealt with some crazy technical stuff. If you watched the first video we put out earlier today, you'd be thankful that we spent some time and redid it. But we ask that you please like, subscribe, and share the channel. We're going to be pumping out some content here. So, yeah, man. Appreciate you guys. Noah, any thoughts before we wrap it up?
Just we're getting some social media pages started. So if you have any questions, definitely if you don't feel like hitting them in the comments, you want to get to us on social media, shoot us a DM, PM, whatever you guys want to call it. Ask us questions if you agree with any of the Player of the Year awards, or if you agree with our predictions on the Super Bowl, or if you see an edge one way or the other. So like I said, appreciate you guys watching. Like, subscribe, comment.